Speaking of wildly successful podcasts.
Huge.
Why? Yeah, I mean, huge. Why is this happening? Podcast hosted by Chris Hayes of MSNBC, wrapping up their podcast tour this Sunday in New York City. Chris joins us now. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Good morning. Congrats on the tour and the podcast. Wow.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been really fun. These events have been really have a kind of distinct and exceptional energy. I'm really been blown away, and it's been great to see all the people come out, and we're psyched for this Sunday.
You come alive, sir, before a live audience. Yeah. But you know, it's interesting how everyone joked everyone has a podcast, but it's almost like there's so much news we don't have time in one radio show or one a TV show that you do a day, do you? There's so much to cover.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on in the world too, and sort of beneath the surface of the news that is hard to fit into the Daily Show. I mean, yesterday we did a segment on the food stamp cuts, which I was happy with, which sort of felt like we were pushing to pushing to make sure that was in the show because it felt important.
I just was going to bring that up and applaud you for that, because there is so much news, and anything that would be a huge story in any other administration. And as Joy Reid did, she just tweeted, "Thanks, Chris Hayes, for reminding folks that while they're pushing poor people toward hunger by kicking them off food stamps, the Trump administration is firing off welfare checks to farmers to keep them from getting mad about how the tariffs are bankrupting them." So thank you for covering that, because 700,000 people losing food stamps before the holidays is a big deal, right?
It is a big deal, and the flip side of that, I mean, 700,000 now could be up to 3 million if they sort of implement these three-phased adjustments in the regulations. But part of what's so maddening about it too is, and Debbie Stabenow made this point on my program last night, Senator from Michigan, is they wanted to get this into. There were some Republicans that wanted to get these changes into the law in the Farm Bill, and there was not enough votes for it. So it was, there was not there was no bipartisan consensus or will to do this, and now they're just doing it on their own. And there's so many things that are like that. I mean, when you look at the farm subsidy payments that are going out, it's the same sort of thing. This remarkable amount of unilateral action that the White House is taking.
Well, and you also, bring the facts, as you always do. You tweeted, most galling is perhaps the fact the savings amount to 1/14 of the annual cost of the Trump direct welfare payments to agribusiness to make up for his trade war. I mean, it is amazing the amount of cruelty and other stuff they're getting done in addition to their corruption and criminality, isn't it?
It's crazy too when the size of the farm bailout is wild. It's bigger than the auto bailout in total dollars. It's maybe 1/3 of the price tag for free college as currently estimated. I mean, think about that. What's 1/3 of that? And was there a huge amount of debate about it? No, they just started writing these checks.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. Can you explain this talking point to me that I don't get the whole, it's elitist free college plans because, it's for rich kids too. But I mean, we let rich kids use public libraries and public, I don't know. Where do you come down on that?
Yeah, I'm disposed to think that universal programs make a lot more sense, but I also think the arguments about means testing aren't crazy. I mean, there are certain ways in which there's a concern that you end up creating a sort of upper middle class government program that doesn't actually fulfill what you want it to do, which is to be universal for everyone, And I can see that concern, but I think that one of the things that gets ignored in the discussion is we had something approaching free college a generation ago. I mean, the in-state tuition at a school like Wisconsin-Madison was, essentially nominal in 1970. Today, it's really high. It's probably $20,000 or more. It's not like we don't know what it looks like when you have college being free or close to free for broad middle class. And of course, back then, it wasn't a sliding scale. So rich parents could send their kids to University of Madison, Wisconsin, too. But the whole point, again, if you look at the California state system, was that these were large universal public services, universal public goods that people could all participate in. And I think the argument for that ends up being stronger than the argument against it.
Well, as Louis Gohmert reminds us, mamas should not let their babies grow up to be law professors at Stanford or Harvard. That would be a bad thing to aspire to.
The whole. I mean, it's just so it's so lame and chewed over. I mean, it's, Republicans and conservatives have been making this sort of populist argument. Even Kellyanne Conway today being like, Pam Carlin looks down at you if you're old. Or like, what the? It's just it's very old and very lame. There's no new.
By the way,
new bringing to this.
Yeah, I think Bernie and Elizabeth Warren's plans cover trade school, so it is not saying everybody has to go to college or being. I'm so sick of this elitist argument, but go ahead.
No, and I just think that, like, it's just striking to me how much of the Trump GOP is actually not that new. There's a lot of things about Trump that are distinctly new, but, a lot of this rhetoric and attacking these, Ivy League educated law professors, straight out of Nixon. That was exactly what Nixon's entire defense was before he had to resign.
Yep. Chris, we just, obviously Nancy Pelosi, you're joining us as she's just announced impeachment's moving forward. I love that a reporter asked her, do you hate Trump? And she just said, do not mess with me.
Yeah.
You tweeted, I actually think the argument that Dems are moving too fast has some merit, but if they were moving more slowly, Trump and the GOP would be loudly whining that they were drawing things out and dragging their feet. You're absolutely right. His tweets reflect the same this morning. They're like, hurry up and impeach me, do it fast. And then, of course, when she announced it, he's whining. So,
yes, there's no process complaint by the Republicans that can be actually, addressed or solved because they don't have a process problem. They have a substance. They don't want the president to be impeached. So, they should take. I don't think they've taken those process critiques particularly seriously, as they should not. But I do think there's a question about, have we gotten to the bottom of the full scale of wrongdoing that there is to investigate? And I'm not quite convinced that's maybe the case.
That may be an endless well, though. That may be an endless well, Chris. Like go ahead.
That's the other issue. Yeah. No, that's exactly the issue. Yeah, you could go forever.
Yeah. Well, and I do think it's compelling what Schiff and I guess Nadler said yesterday is that it is critical because it is an ongoing crime in the middle of an ongoing election that we are going toward right now.
That's really what's so unnerving about the whole thing is what is happening and what will he try to do as 2020 gets closer, and particularly if he thinks that he's underwater, and I continue to worry about that profoundly.
Yeah, me too. You by the way, you commented on Doug Collins' answer when someone asked him, you keep saying POTUS was concerned about corruption. If that's true, why didn't he bring it up once during the calls with the Ukrainian president, but instead talk about the Biden investigation? Doug Collins serves up inscrutable word salad that doesn't answer the question. You said this answer is amazing. It is almost close to homina, homina, homina.
Basically that. So, and again, there's not a very good defense of the president's actions on the merits, and so there's been a lot of homina, homina, homina. But again, they're just trying to hold together that 40% of the country that's with them, and so far they've been able to govern from that 40% base, which is a remarkable fact in a democracy.
Yeah. You tweeted, Nunes says, quote, it seems very unlikely I'd be taking calls from random people, but the call records in the report show that he definitely did. This just doesn't, once again, pass the smell test, right? It's like, the guy that was indicted. Oh, that guy? Okay, well, I don't really remember. It's just...
His very lame denial to Hannity, which he looked like almost ghost-faced it. Look, clearly he's involved with these guys, and he's clearly sort of linked into the entire plot that this was part of, right? Which is this kind of dirt-digging operation, being guided by some very, very sketchy and corrupt former Ukrainian officials. But, Nunes is clearly at the center of this whole thing, and for him to sit there straight-faced, for 2 weeks and not disclose that is really something else.
How did they say, about hubris comes before the fall, that Rudy Giuliani is presently, as we speak in Ukraine, continuing to do this? It's just astounding, isn't it?
I think he's in real trouble. I really do. I think all of the facts suggest, and the subpoenas, which were reported on by the Wall Street Journal and then other outlets, I think, last week, the fact there's a criminal investigation of him. I think he's got very, very serious, legal exposure right now. And that shoe dropping would really be something else. It really would.
Well, and that's the question, right, Chris? As we, because now it's not a debate. We are moving forward now with impeachment. But what do you think the chances are that we're going to get, in a timely fashion, McGahn testimony, financial records, something else that's obviously huge?
Yeah, I mean that's the calculation they're making, is that the appellate court and the courts will not move quickly. Well, they move fairly expeditiously. The appeals courts have. The problem is they view this all as like, go to the Supreme Court where we can count to 5, and I think that the House folks are worried about that.
Yeah.
And both from a timing perspective and also from an ultimate judgment perspective. So I think that's informing why they're moving ahead in the way they are. And I don't, it's an easy decision to second guess. I feel ambivalent about it, but I think that's what's informing some of their concerns, is what the Supreme Court would actually do.
Yeah. Well, there's one cure for that, and that is, why is this happening at Town Hall in New York City this Sunday, December 8th, the final stop of Chris's fall podcast tour. It reminds me of a time when we could still have nice things. You're going to be joined by playwrights Tony Kushner and Jeremy Harris.
Oh, cool.
That is fantastic.
Wow.
But I mean, just to have a discussion about anything else than just him, right?
Yes, no, exactly, about sort of theater and storytelling and spectacle and politics. And I sort of adore those two. Kushner's a hero of mine, and Jeremy's play is fantastic, controversial, wild. So it's going to be a great, great night.
Yeah, Angels in America, obviously, for people who don't know, Tony Kushner, Jeremy Harris, the Slave play. Yeah. Chris, speaking of, we've been talking about racial issues here, and I keep saying, what's America's early warning system? Black ladies, and I am personally bummed, because just this morning, the Morning Consult poll shows Kamala Harris has the highest percentage of people of color. I mean, what is your take on this election cycle?
I think that I think it's been hard to break through. I think that Kamala Harris is a big problem. That I think, when she announced Biden wasn't in the race, once Biden got in the race, Biden takes up a lot of space. I mean, I think that's part of the fundamental, Biden takes up a lot of space. Bernie Sanders, the runner-up last time, has a huge amount of following, and Elizabeth Warren has a very distinct vision. And between the three of them, that takes up a lot of the oxygen. And so that's been just a kind of breaking through has been a problem for a lot of the candidates.
It's the biggest field I can ever remember. Yeah.
And so I think it's just been hard to get through that. And I think partly because Harris built a machine that was designed to be big from the beginning, it became a hard thing to sustain. And again, a lot of when people look back and say, oh, she was so highly touted, that was before it was very clear that Biden was going to get in. And a lot of people thought Biden wouldn't get in. Mm-hmm. And I think if you rerun this race without Biden, that Harris is in the top, probably in the top 3.
Who do you think benefits? Who do you think benefits immediately most from Kamala Harris dropping out?
I think there's probably some marginal help for Warren. I think that some of the polling indicates there was a fair amount of people sort of moving between those two.
Yeah, I was.
But, again, she's only polling at 5%, so it wasn't a huge amount of votes to get there. But I suspect they'll be fairly evenly divided, to be honest. But I think probably Warren and Biden are the most likely.
Did you see Biden's new ad is good, right? About the whole world laughing at Donald Trump. It has the benefit it's going to make Trump crazy. Crazier.
Yeah. Seems like a design to troll the president production.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And by the way, speaking of funny, you are really funny in your podcast tour with a live audience. Go see Why Is This Happening at Town Hall in New York City this Sunday, December 8th, the final stop on Chris Hayes' podcast.
And we have a link to it on your Facebook page and on Twitter.
And to get tickets.
Yes.
Yes.
Chris, I'm
thank you, guys.
I always love the opportunity to have you talk back to me, because I yell at you every day, just encouragement and stuff, but you never talk back, and so I appreciate the opportunity. I'll see you next.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie.
See you next time. All right. Bye-bye.
Aww.